would you say it's that inner search for peace, truth, the inclusivity of Unitarianism that kind of inspires your peace work?
Well, one thing Unitarianism did teach me was to think a little bit more laterally and to try and think outside the box, because if you can do that religiously, you can do it in the other spheres of your life, to try and think outside the box. So it was a help. I would say when I met, because when I move on to the work that I did, which was specific peace work, you know, when we were involved in peace work, whether it was peace trains, peace rallies, peace vigils, or whatever, those things are good in themselves. They're the manifestation of peace. But they're not the end result. The end result, I believe, is when you engage with those who are doing the killing. And eventually when I engaged with what were known as the Protestant paramilitaries, I don't know, I'm being careful here because I don't know many people know the history of Ireland, the recent history of the conflict. The Protestant paramilitaries were known as the UVF, the Ulster Volunteer Force. So on one side you had the IRA, and on the other side the Ulster Volunteer Force and the Ulster Defence Association, who were the Protestant terrorists or paramilitaries. And then in the middle you had the British Army and the police service. So you basically had a three-way conflict. And the Ulster Volunteer Force, the Protestant paramilitaries, would have been my historic enemy. They were the people who I would regard as my enemy. Indeed, they had killed one of my closest friends, a musician like Lucien, and a singer like Lucien, and who would have had a wonderful career. And one night, they ambushed his bus when they were coming back from doing a concert, and they wiped out the whole band, bar one. Only one musician survived out of that band. And he was one of my closest friends. So, not by design, but by accident, and because of my involvement in the peace train, I met up with these people. I was taken to a secret location to meet them, with what they call the Supreme Command of the UVF in Belfast. And I sat down with them. I was terrified to meet them. I didn't know why they wanted to meet me, but it worked out later on. They had their reasons. And the first thing I said to them was I wanted to see face to face the people who had killed one of my closest friends, and to ask them the question, why did they do it? Naturally, to be fair to them, I wasn't going to get a rational or logical answer, other than there was a war on, and that people get killed in war, and these people were collateral damage, so to speak, including my friend. However, it went beyond that. I discovered later on the real reason they wanted to meet me was, this was 1993, and they knew that the IRA had sent a message to the British government that they wanted the conflict to end. So these people needed to understand, how would they be part of that? How would they be part of bringing the conflict to an end? And they wanted me to act as a go-between between them and the Irish government. So basically, from 1993 right up even until today, I act as a conduit, a link, a touchstone between the loyalist paramilitaries and the Dublin government.
Can I ask you on a personal note, what's it like when a man who favours peace, or who has dedicated his life to peace, comes face to face with a man who has committed murders, has ordered murders to be committed, comes face to face with a man of violence?
Not too difficult, because I may be a man of peace, but I'm not a peaceful man. Let me explain that. When I grew up as a young man in Ireland, I wasn't necessarily a peaceful person. I was a boxer. I got in fights. I still have a gap there where I lost a tooth, and then it got replaced. And at one time in my life, I was sentenced to 6 months in jail for hitting a man. So it would, he deserved it. So, well, that's another story. So in a way, because I think we often see those who make peace as somehow different than those who make war. And sometimes we try and see the connection. We've got to remember that we've got to convince the protagonists to become the peacemakers. And that's a very difficult thing to accept, that when you sit down with people who are making war and enter into dialogue with them, you have to some extent accept their language. And I remember one time they were telling me, these people, that they were going to put more bombs in Dublin. And I said, well, look, that's my city. You're going to put bombs in my city. You're going to kill people probably I know. But maybe there are people who might want to listen to you. Their view was that this was the only way they could fight this campaign. But once I was able to engage with them, I'm not saying I didn't make them make peace. They had it within themselves. I just became the touchstone for them. That they could say things to me and I could say it to the government. And that the government could say or do things that could allow them to come closer to peacemaking. It was, because one man said to me, war is easier than peace. You know, he said, I'm a terrorist. When I get up in the morning, the sun is shining, my gun is in my locker, I take my gun out, I go out and I shoot someone, and then I have my dinner, and it's a good day. But if there's talk about peace and talk about conflict resolution, that's complex. That's difficult to get your head around. And I can understand that. So in a way, Mark, to answer your question, I actually found some of the men involved in violence actually more reasonable than some of the people involved in peace. That's, you know, I found that actually within some of the peace movements there were greater egos than there were among some of the paramilitaries. Because they were very single and very focused. They were fighting a war. But if the war could end, then it was all over for them.